Student, welcome to the course Lasers, Fundamentals and Applications. In the previous lecture, we have seen how the material interact with the radiation when the material is exposed to the radiation. So let us see the three processes that occur in the material medium when it is exposed to the radiation. So these three processes are also called as principles of laser. So first process is absorption. Or stimulated absorption. So in this process, let us consider two energy levels. So E1 is the lower energy level and E2 is the upper energy level. Let us consider N1 is the number of atoms per unit volume in the lower energy level and N2 is the number of atoms in the upper energy level per unit volume. Now, if this medium, if we have some atoms in the lower energy level, so in the thermal equilibrium, what we have is the number of atoms in the lower energy level is higher than the number of atoms in the upper energy level. So, a photon incident on the system, that incident photon, if it has energy h nu equal to the difference E2 minus E1, that incident photon will be absorbed by the atom in the lower energy level. So this atom in the lower energy level absorbs the incident photon and it goes to the upper energy level, right? So before transition our atom was in the lower energy level. So after transition this atom is now in the upper energy level, right? So this is before transition. This is called as after transition. So before transition our atom was in the lower energy level E1. An incident photon strikes the atom in the lower energy level. This atom absorbs this incident photon and it goes to the upper energy level or excited state. So this process is called as absorption or stimulated absorption, because in this process the incident photon is absorbed by the atom and it is going from ground state to the excited state. So this process is called as stimulated absorption or induced absorption or simply absorption. Corresponding to each transition made by an atom, one photon disappears from the incident beam of photons. So let us consider we have our atom is in the lower energy state. So in this case one photon is incident on the system. It gives a star. So where A is the atom in the ground state and A star is the atom in the excited state. So in this process one photon is absorbed by the atom and this atom is now at the excited level, right? So the number of absorption transitions occurring in the material medium N absorb is proportional to the number density of atoms in the lower energy level. So it is proportional to number density of atoms in the lower energy level that is N1. It is also proportional to the spectral energy density or energy density of incident photons. So it is proportional to energy density of incident photons. So this relation I can write N absorb is proportional to N1 E of nu. So E of nu is the energy density of incident photon, and these transitions occur in time delta t. So which is equal to N absorb is equal to some constant of proportionality, and that constant is B12 N1 E of nu into delta t. So this constant B12 is also called as Einstein's coefficient for stimulated absorption. Einstein's coefficient for stimulated absorption. So this is the absorption process. So let us see our next process, spontaneous emission. Again, let us consider two energy levels. So our atom is in the excited state. So we know that the excited states has limited lifetime. So the lifetime of the excited states is of the order of 10 raised to minus 8 to 10 raised to minus 9 seconds. So after the lifetime of the state is over, the atom has to fall back again to the ground state, right? So after the lifetime of the state is over, this atom will fall back to the ground state, and this atom will come to the ground state again. So this process in which the atom in the excited state falls back to the ground state on its own accord spontaneously is called as spontaneous emission, right? So in this process, the excited atom falls back to the ground state and it emits one photon, right? So in this case, one photon will be emitted, and that emitted photon has energy equal to the difference between two energy levels. So this process we can write schematically. So in this process, let us say our atom was in the excited state, it falls back to the ground state spontaneously and it emits a photon of energy h nu. The number of spontaneous emissions occurring in the medium during time delta t is independent of the energy density of incident photons. So it is independent of the number of photons present in the radiation, right? So it is equal to, so the number of spontaneous transitions will be proportional to the number of atoms in the upper energy level. So that is number density of atoms in the upper energy level. It is independent of the energy density of incident photons. So this number is equal to 821 N2 into delta T. So delta T is the time during which we are considering the transition, spontaneous transitions. So here A21 is the constant of proportionality. We call it Einstein's coefficient. So A21 is Einstein's coefficient for spontaneous emission. So there are some features of this spontaneous emission process. So the excited atom, so we know that the excited atom has limited lifetime due to the lifetime of the excited state. So it has to remain there for a very short time, and after the lifetime is over, that atom has to fall back to the ground state, and this atom fall back to the ground state emitting a photon. So we cannot control the process from outside. So one of the feature of this process is, this is spontaneous process. So we cannot control it from outside. So there will be a fixed rate of spontaneous transitions occurring in the medium. So the spontaneous process is essentially probabilistic. We cannot control it from outside. The number of spontaneous transitions per second divided by the number of atoms gives us the probability of transitions per second, and that probability is equal to the number of spontaneous transitions per second divided by number of atoms. So this probability is equal to 1 upon n2 into nsp by delta t. So this is probability of transition, spontaneous transition, and from this relation we can see this p21 is equal to a21, right? So the a21, Einstein's coefficient for spontaneous emission, gives the probability of spontaneous transitions occurring per second, right? So this is the process of spontaneous emission. So let us move to the next process, stimulated emission. So let us move to the next process, stimulated emission. So we know that the excited states has limited lifetime, right? So the atom in the excited state has a limited time for which it can remain there, and after the lifetime of the state is over, this atom has to fall back again to the ground state. Now suppose before the lifetime of the state is over and a photon of energy h nu incident on this system. So in this case, the incident photon having energy again equal to E2 minus E1, this incident photon strike on the atom in the excited state, and this incident photon triggers the atom in the excited state to fall back to the ground state. So in this process, before the lifetime of the state is over, our excited atom is now triggered by the incident photon to fall back to the ground state. So in this process, the excited atom fall back to the ground state and two photons will be emitted. So in this process, two photons will be emitted, and these two photons will be having energy again equal to h nu. Each photon has energy h nu, that means each photon has frequency nu. The two emitted photons, they are identical in all respects. That means they have the same frequency, they have the same wavelength. That means they are coherent, they are monochromatic, right? So schematically, if you want to write this process, so we can write our excited atom. One photon is incident on this atom. So in this process, the excited atom comes back to the ground state, and in this process two photons will be emitted. So this process is called as stimulated emission. Stimulated means we are triggering the atom, we are giving stimulus to the atom to fall back to the ground state, right? So we are giving stimulus to the excited atom to fall back to the ground state, and therefore this process is called as stimulated emission. So this process we can control from outside, right? Because we can control the photons from outside, incident photons from outside. The number of stimulated transitions occurring in the medium during time delta t can be written as, so NST is now proportional to the, it is depend on the incident photon, right? So it is proportional to the energy density of incident photons, E of nu. This number of stimulated transitions is also proportional to the number density of atoms in the excited state N2 and time delta t. So NST we can write is equal to B21 into E of nu into N2 in time delta t, right? So here the number of stimulated transitions occurring during time delta t is equal to the B12 into E of nu. So it is the energy density of incident photons, and N2 is the number of atoms per unit volume present in the excited state, right? So it is, so this constant B21 is called as Einstein's coefficient for stimulated emission. So this is the process of stimulated emission. The process of stimulated emission has some exciting characteristics. First, the excited photon is identical to the incident photon in all respects. That means the frequency of the emitted photon is same as that of the incident photon. It is also coherent to the incident photon. That means its phase is same as that of the incident photon. Also, the excited photon is in the same state of polarization as that of the incident photon. Second, the stimulated emission process can be controlled from outside. So this is very important feature, because in the spontaneous emission, that process we cannot control from outside, but here the stimulated emission process can be controlled from outside. And third very important feature is that the number of emitted photons goes on multiplying. That means one incident photon triggers one atom to fall back to the ground state, and in this process two photons will be emitted. These two emitted photons again triggers two more atoms to fall back to the ground state, and in this process four more photons will be produced. Again these four photons triggers four more photons, and in this process 8 photons will be produced, and this process goes on multiplying. Thus the number of photons builds in an avalanche. The combined stimulated emissions from a sample of large number of atoms gives the amplification of light. The resultant effect is that the constructive interference of many waves traveling in the same direction, having the same frequency and in the same phase, produces a very intense coherent beam of light. So let us move to the next topic, population inversion. So before going to the population inversion, let us first study what is meant by population or population density. The number of atoms per unit volume in an energy level is called as population or population density. So we know that in the normal or thermal equilibrium, the number of atoms in the lower energy level or in the ground state are higher than the number of atoms in the excited state or upper energy level, right? So let us consider two energy levels, E1 and E2, and let us say N1 is the number of atoms in the lower energy level and N2 is the number of atoms in the upper energy level. So N1 is the population of the lower level, right? That means the ground state, and N2 is the population of the excited state. So in the normal or thermal equilibrium, what we have, this N1 is very greater than N2. That means the number of atoms in the ground state is very greater than the number of atoms in the excited state. But for the laser action, the number of atoms in the excited state must be greater than the number of atoms in the ground state. That means N2 must be greater than N1. That means the ratio N2 upon N1 should be greater than 1. So this is the necessary condition for laser. So this condition can be produced by supplying energy to the atoms in the ground state, right? So if we supply energy to the atoms in the ground state, so we can create a condition in which the number of atoms in the excited state is greater than the number of atoms in the ground state. So let us see. So this is, let us say we have normal condition or thermal equilibrium. So in the normal or thermal equilibrium, the number of atoms in the ground state is much greater than the number of atoms in the excited level. But for the lasing action to happen, what we need is the number of atoms in the excited state must be greater than the number of atoms in the ground state, right? So this condition in which the number of atoms in the excited state is greater than the number of atoms in the ground state is a non-equilibrium condition, right? So this is a non-equilibrium condition, and this condition is called as population inversion, right? So this is called as population inversion. That means the number of atoms N2 of the excited state is greater than the number of atoms N1 of the ground state. So this is the inverted equilibrium or non-equilibrium condition. So this condition is called as population inversion. So this is the necessary condition for lasing action. So we can produce this condition by supplying energy to the atoms in the ground state. If we supply energy to the atoms in the ground state, these atoms, they will go to the excited state, right? So in this case, the atoms, they are now in the excited state. So let us move to our next topic, metastable state. So we have seen in the population inversion condition, the number of atoms in the excited state is greater than the number of atoms in the ground state. That means this is the necessary condition for laser. But we know that the excited state has limited lifetime. After the lifetime of the state is over, the excited atom falls back to the ground state. And again, the state of population inversion is lost. So again, we have to supply energy to the ground state atoms so that they move to the excited state to maintain the population inversion, right? So the excited levels has lifetime of the order of 10 raised to minus 8 to 10 raised to minus 8 minus 9 second, and because of the very short life of the lifetime of the excited states, the atom cannot remain there for long time, and we cannot maintain the state of population inversion for the long time, right? And therefore, in order to have lasing action, we must introduce some states which has lifetime greater than that of the excited states, right? So such states which are having lifetime greater than that of the excited states are called as metastable state. Let us again consider two energy levels, E1 and E2. E1 is the ground state and E2 is the excited state. And we know that excited states has lifetime of the order of 10 raised to minus 8 to 10 raised to minus 9 second. So they have very short lifetime, and the atoms, they cannot remain there for longer time, and therefore we cannot maintain the condition for population inversion. And in order to achieve this, some of the states are introduced by or by some other process. So these states are called as metastable states. So let us consider this is our state. So it is E2 is our state which has lifetime of 10 raised to minus 3 to 10 raised to minus 4 second. So that means its lifetime is much higher than that of the excited state, right? So such states are called as metastable states. So in this case, the atoms from the ground state will be lifted to the excited state by supplying some energy, and these atoms from the excited state make transitions to the metastable state. That transitions may be radiative or non-radiative, and the lasing action will happen between the metastable state and ground state. So in this case, we have to create condition for population inversion in between the metastable state and ground state, and since the metastable states has lifetime much greater than that of the excited states, we can easily achieve the population inversion by using metastable states.